What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and in this video we're going to talk about the prospects of Bitcoin and crypto as a whole being in a bear market. Now, I personally don't think that we're in a bear market. I think that the crypto market as a whole has a lot more growth to go between now and the end of the year, let alone the end of this market cycle. But I do think that instead of taking the bullish position, trying to put yourself in the shoes of the bear and see what they're seeing, or at least compare this bear market to other bear markets, can give us a little bit better of an understanding of what kind of environment we're in. Now, again, I don't think we're in a bear market, but there's a lot of people who think that the bull market has ended, that we are actually in the beginnings of a bear market. Actually, there are some very large YouTube accounts who have put some polls on X recently, and over half of the people that vote on these polls have officially said that they think the top is in for this cycle. So if that's the case, we should be seeing the same signs. Thankfully, we have not just one bear market or two bear markets to base ourselves off of, but we have several bear markets to compare notes to. I'd like to do that to start this video off, and then as the video progresses, we're really going to drive home the fact. It's not an opinion, it's a fact that the bull market is alive and well. If that sounds good to you, hit the like button, subscribe, and let's get into it. But nonetheless, let's take the position of the bears here. Okay, let's take this position. In order to do this, first and foremost, through a simple way, I would just like to say, okay, if this is a bear market, let's pretend in our heads this is a bear market. What does already, first off, this does not look like the end of a bull market. This does not compare to any ending that we've had. No blow off top, spectacular finish, right? Like we've seen in other cycles. Maybe this cycle's so weak that we don't get one. We don't get one. We get this very tenacious, methodical movement, well structured all the way through, and this cycle is weaker than the rest of them. That's not how I learned TA. Whenever I learned TA in the very beginning, 10 years ago, I learned that well structured, long lasting consolidations like this build for a longer cycle and a more powerful cycle, not a weaker one that ends in a whimper. But let's pretend that's what it is, okay? This was the beginning of last bear market. This was the beginning of the prior bear market. This was the beginning of this one. And this, of course, was the beginning of our very first bear market. Fortunately enough, we can compare notes. The very first bear market that we had, 1 month after the top was in, we dropped 65%. 1 month after the top was in, we dropped 65%. That was our initial drop, right? You can see it here. We dropped initially here, consolidated for a little bit, and then we continued to drop. Okay, 65%. That's what the beginning of the bear market looked like for us. Over here, we dropped 63% in the first month as well, right? 1 month goes by, boom. Down here, that was our first pivot, 63%. You can see that not only do bull markets end with a bang, but bear markets start with a bang. They really do. This is the same for the next cycle. Now, here we weren't over 60%. Here it's a little bit less of a bang, but still 53% in what is basically like 5 weeks' time. That's crazy. That's crazy. Our first initial kind of drop point here, I mean, even here, even if we measured it here, that's a 45% drop. This overall was a 70% drop. Just crazy, crazy dumping in that first month of the bear market, every single cycle. Last cycle is no exception, right? Whether it was the end of the bull market and we dropped 54% in the first month, or the actual proper start of the bear market. Again, the bear market didn't start over here. It started here. This is the beginning of the bear market, right? And we can see that across several different spaces, not just crypto markets, but stock markets as well. But that was the beginning of the bear market. And again, 40% of a drop, this was 4 weeks after the top. This was actually 3 weeks after the top, so well within the first month. 40% of a drop there. Here we are in the current bear market, right? And I don't think we're in a bear market. I'm just saying that for fun, right? Here we are in our current bear market. It has been, as of today, it is the 5th, in about 3 hours and 45 minutes, it will have been officially 1 month. From a high to a low, we are down 21%. If I was a bear and I was declaring that this was a bear market, I would be praying to bear Jesus that in the next 4 days and 4 hours, or at least by the end of next week, that we were down all the way at about 70K, because a 40% drop or more is what we have become accustomed to throughout the life of Bitcoin. And the thought here again, right, might be, some bears might say, well, we didn't have a blow off top, so it's not going to be as eruptive of a downside. Okay, that's a great point. Guess what? Last cycle, we didn't have a blow off top either. We actually had months. We had April 21st to November. We had like half a year's worth of consolidation. before we topped off, before we actually found our bear market beginning. So on the bright side, if that's the stance you're taking, we already have an example of that in which we did still drop 40% in the first 3 weeks after topping off. This is the end, right? Here we are, not 3 weeks later, 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks later. Not 3 weeks later, right? Here it was 1, 2, 3 weeks later, and we didn't have the blow off top finish. No, this is during a double top consolidation week end of cycle rally, right? Same thing here, right? We have this weak end of cycle rally if it's the bear market. Fortunately enough, we have only dropped 21%, which is not even close. It's not even close. It's half of what we saw last cycle. It's not even close to half of what we saw during this drop here or any other cycles before. So if this is a bear market, if this is that terrible, calamitous, massive drop that everybody's expecting the world to go through right now, like a Great Depression or recession, we are really kicking it off on a slow note. And people are very emotional, aren't they? The fear and greed index is at a 20. And on my profile, I even actually made a post about this on x.com talking about how the last time that we saw these levels of fear printed was on April 7th of this year. The last time that we were at a 20 or lower was on April 7th of this year. What did Bitcoin do on April 7th? Does anybody remember? It was right here. It was right there. That's April 7th, right there. That's it right there. It bottomed out and then it went on a run from 74K to 126K before it saw its next 21% drop. Here's the other kicker, right? I didn't mean to click on this chart, but this was the next chart that we were going to pull up. Every drop we've had this cycle, I've measured every single drop, not every little drop, just significant pivots from highs to lows of various consolidation phases. 22%, 21%, 21%, 33%, 32%. 21.6%. Are we in a bear market? If so, we're doing a very weak start to it. And again, if your reason is, well, we had a weak finish. Well, we had a weak finish before, and we still had a very good start to the bear market. Double what we're experiencing now. Are we in a bear market, or are we at the ass end, the very ass end, the voluptuous ass end of what is a standard consolidation phase throughout this entire bull market that we've seen so far, right? Not only that, but if we put up our 50-week moving average, right, where are we here? Hold on. SMA, moving average, simple, right there. I thought I had these set up already, but I guess I don't. Maybe I have them on the other chart. We put out the 50-week moving average. Every single time this cycle that we've been right at this point has been where we found support. Is this the beginning of the bear market, or are we just as fearful now as we were the last time that we were at this exact moving average that we're at now? Are we in the same place, doing the same kind of drop, right? With a very modest correction, 21% in comparison to some of these other corrections. And that makes sense because here where we dropped 30%, here where we dropped 33%, look at the growth. Look at the overall growth that took place before he dropped here. Look at that overall growth. These are the biggest moves of the cycle. This last move was not that big. It was actually kind of wimpy. So of course we're going to get a smaller drop. 21%. It's in line with everything else that we've seen. People are bearish. Euphoria is gone. Depression is here. And really what I think is happening is that the majority of crypto participants at this point, if not majority, about half, expect that the bull market's done and they're going to get Bitcoin on the cheap at prices below 70K, at prices below 50K. There's a lot of predictions out there that Bitcoin's going to 30K or even below 10K. It's crazy. You guys are foaming at the mouth. You're euphoric for the price to go down. And we're at the top. Do you guys remember last cycle? I remember last cycle. I was there. Do you remember the cycle before? I remember the cycle before. I was there. I remember right here, after we dropped all the way down to 6K and we came back up here, I remember people were euphoric. They were euphoric, saying that okay, we're going to go to 50K. I remember here, people saying the same thing after we dropped from 20K all the way down to 10K and then back up to 18K. I remember people saying the same thing here. We're going to 50K by Christmas. I remember last cycle here, myself, I was very bullish. Everybody was bullish. We had maximum euphoria. In fact, we can measure this. We don't need to take my word for it. Let's do this real quick here. Hold on. Let's go to Crypto Fear and Greed Index. Where are we at? Crypto Fear and Greed Index right here. You don't have to take my word for it. We can observe it. But I'll tell you what, to get to the point, what we didn't see here was anywhere near the levels of euphoria that we saw here. We had more euphoria, you guys, here last year than we did here at the all-time highs. And you think the cycle's over. Yeah, let's keep it going here. Crypto Fear and Greed Index, okay? Let's get it here. So we're going to go to our all-time history, okay? Where were we on our Fear and Greed Index? Even here. Even on like after this initial drop, right? Let's say December of 2021. Where were we in December of 2021? Well, December of 2021, you can see, oh, that's 2020. December of 2021, we actually did sell off a little bit. Okay, so hey, that point goes against my favor. We were actually at these same levels here. November, we were at these levels though. At the very top, we were at these levels here. Where here for Bitcoin, this October at our current highs, oops, right? November 2021, where we topped off last cycle, was here. We saw a maximum reading of about, why does it say 54? I'm trying to get this one here. It won't let me see. It's somewhere between 80 and 90. Here in October, last month, where we topped out October 6th, we were at a 74. We weren't above 80. Last time we were above 80, right? And then where the bull market actually ended was here when we were at well above the 90s, okay? We go to the prior cycle. Oh, we don't even have the prior cycle. This thing came out in 2018. That's right. Oh, so this won't help us out. This actually is not a good example of what I'm going over. But the point remains, we didn't even see close to the same levels of euphoria that we saw in prior cycles. We didn't even see anything close to the levels of euphoria that we saw earlier this cycle in December of 2024. We had more euphoria there, right? I've never seen in my life, and it's been 10 years that I've been in crypto now, so I'm pretty new to this still. Not new to crypto. I realize I'm more experienced than the average person in crypto, but new to this market cycle dynamic stuff, okay, and stocks and stuff. I'm pretty new to this still, but I don't think that we're meant to have a cycle ending finale or a cycle top when we have lower levels of euphoria than where we did at a prior high, at a lower high. That doesn't make sense to me, right? And we had a lot more. I don't even know what I was about to say. I was going to say we had a lot more reasons to go down here, but we had a lot of pessimism here. I truly feel like the fear here is more than what we saw back here. But nevertheless, again, the levels of fear that we have right now are comparable only to the last area that we found support back in April and the time before that, which was August in 2024, which was our last low as well. The last two times that we've seen levels of fear like we do now were here and here. And the only time that we've seen euphoria that was at these levels that's anywhere close was here this cycle. There's no way that we're topping off with no euphoria. That doesn't happen, guys. That's not what happened. You need bag holders. You need the big dogs need bag holders. They need that max euphoria. People need to believe that no matter what the price does, we're going to 50K by Christmas. We're going to double in price, triple in price, right? We haven't had that yet. We got a lot of room to grow. I don't really know what else to say. I feel like I had something else that I wanted to say, and I can't remember what it is. Liquidation levels are down. The government shutdown's coming to an end. We are in some of the most bullishly, fundamentally speaking, the most bullishly promised market conditions that have ever existed for crypto. While we are at 104K now, and we just bounced off of 98.9K, while that is exciting, it's important to not get too excited or discouraged here, okay? Remember, the bears, since July, have been working to push the price down, and through all their efforts, they barely for a moment got the price below $100,000. Just for a moment. That's all they got. And now we're back up here, right? They worked all that time where the bulls clearly have an easier time moving higher, with the exception of the 10th. The 10th was an absolute massive correction, but we do have higher to go. We are in this very massive megaphone pattern here. We have what's called a partial decline. A partial decline is where you reach for the bottom trend line like this and you just come up shy. You decline, but partially. It's not a full decline, right? This typically implies that we're going to have a reversal and a breakout to the upside. If we were to measure this pattern and put the measure move there, that gives us a 150 to 160,000 price for Bitcoin, likely by the end of November or at some point in December. Certainly by the end of the year we should be there. So again, regardless of what happens over the coming days, even if we go lower, even if pessimism and fear gets worse, it's only a better opportunity to buy. Oh, this is what I wanted to talk about in reference to the fear and greed. We haven't even seen extreme greed. Extreme greed happened in last year's pump. It happened here in March of 2024. We didn't get it here. There's no way in hell that the bear market's beginning with the top being at barely any levels of greed at all, right? The reality is anybody who thinks that the market is dead right now, that the bull market is over, you probably full-heartedly, confidently believe that the bull market was alive and well at these highs. So you're just emotional, right? And the emotions get the best of us. They really do. It takes time to learn how to ignore them. You will never be without emotions in this game. You will always have emotions, but when you learn to ignore them, that's whenever you really will make money. And I think a lot of us are getting set up to make some money here pretty soon, you guys. I got nothing else to say. I'm just rambling at this point. Hit the like button, subscribe. Thank you all for being here. I'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves. If this is a bear market, this is the wimpiest bear market we've ever seen. From a starting position, it really is. Unless in the next 4 days we're going to drop to 70K, this is the weakest bear market start we've ever seen. If we had a very weak bull market, it might make sense that we have a weak bear market, but half, like that. That's pretty big difference there. A 20% drop versus a 40% drop for what we typically see in the first month of a Bitcoin bear market, right? Last cycle was weak, and we still had a 40% dump in the first month. Every cycle before was larger than 50%. We don't even have half of that now. Okay. I got nothing else. I'll see you on the next one. Take care of yourselves, all right? Buy the dip. Hodl. We got so much to go. Bye-bye.